You're listening to Titans of the Trades. I'm your host, Ryan Englin, author of Hire Better People Faster and creator of the CoreFit hiring system, a proven process to help growing companies attract and retain only the best. I'm on a mission to revolutionize the perception of the trades and elevate it to new heights. After growing up in a blue-collar family, my passion for making the trades cool again runs deep. If you're a titan in the industry and want to be on my show, stick around until the end and I'll reveal how you can be my next guest. I'm your host, Ryan Englin. Today's guest is a speaker, an author, and a coach, and she teaches a process to help you lead from the inside out. Today's workforce is completely different than what we grew up in. We need to learn to be able to navigate the differences so that we can apply these principles not only in the work we do, but we can also work with our field leaders to make it happen. I want to introduce today's guest, Erin Thorp. Erin, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
All right. So empathy. We're going to talk about empathy today. I love it. I love this topic. I cannot wait to hear your take on it. When I think about construction leaders, especially in the field, I don't think empathy.
Nope, most people don't.
I don't go there. That's not where I start. So help me understand this. What is something that we're going to learn today? What's a myth that you want to challenge our listeners with? Something that'll change their mindset, make them walk away going, that's different. What's the biggest myth that you see in the work that you do?
Quite simply, I think it's that most people think empathy is a weakness, and I would say it's your greatest strength.
That reminds me of people don't wanting to be humble because they think humiliation, which is not good.
Which is not
humble, and being humble and humility is a good thing. So elaborate on that for me. Talk to me about that being weakness versus strength. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think a lot of people think empathy equals just this like super messy display of emotions, or that they have to be super accommodating and nothing will ever get done. And we'll all just sit around and sing Kumbaya and we'll just care about how each other feels all the time. And we won't actually do any work. Like that's the myth, right? They see empathy and they're like messy emotions and people stuff. And I don't want to go there.
Well, I think some people, they get confused. I know for me for a while, I was confusing empathy and sympathy.
Absolutely.
And they are way different. Can you explain that for us? Like, what's your take on that?
Yeah. So sympathy is like feeling sorry for someone and feelings of pity and sorrow. And if you think about that, like when I hear that and I go, I don't want someone to pity me. Like, ew, that just sounds terrible. And so sympathy, when we express it, usually drives people away because it's not a connecting emotion. It's like, because we're coming at it from that like, super crappy that's happening to you, right? Whereas empathy is feeling with somebody, not for them, but with them. And I think the hard part for most of us is it requires that we connect to our own emotions, which in construction, we do a lot of work to disconnect from our emotions.
Yeah. Now so the sympathy that's what people think. This is what I believe. I think people think when you say empathy, they go to a place of, well, I don't want to be sympathetic because that's that spiral and we go down it together and I don't want to do that. Yeah. And empathy is more powerful, more constructive, and can actually lift the whole team up. Is that fair?
I think, and I think as leaders, it gives us this I look at it as like, it's a really important part of the people equation. It's information you need to make good decisions, right? Regardless of, maybe it's a project decision or a team decision or how are we going to approach this problem decision, but you need that information about where everybody's at to be able to make the best decision because you need people. Yeah. Like construction, we still need people to do this job. Some of it is automated and some of it's happening by itself, but the large majority of the construction and building world, like we still need people to do this work.
It's going to be a long time before robots are building everything and troubleshooting everything. It might not even happen in my lifetime. Like that's how long I think it's going to be before that happens. And I think that I love what you're saying because in the work that we do at Core Matters with helping recruit and attract the field employees, which not a lot of people want to get into the field employees because it's weird and different and messy and not always a lot of money in it and high volume and turnover and all of those other things that we have to solve if we want to attract more people, not to just the current jobs, but to the industry.
Yeah.
Because you probably have heard the stat. It's alarming. 40% within the next 5 years are going to retire because this is brutal work. It hurts the body. And as you age.
Well, it is. And I also think that there was this missing generation, and I'm in it, where the trades were not, they were looked as lesser than, right? And so it was like, go to university, become a professional, do all these things. And I think we've really missed the boat on the fact that, like, we all still drive cars, we all still need houses built, we all still have toilets and lights and all these things that need to be maintained. And who do we call? We call tradespeople.
Yeah.
Right? We need them, and it's not a lesser than career. And I do see that dialogue changing. Like, I have teenagers who are now entering this world, and like my son's super excited to go into trades, and because he sees it as like a way to just stay physical and use his hands and not be stuck behind a desk all day. And he's excited about it. Right? So I'm hoping to make an impact so that he wants to stay there, right? So that he doesn't get out there and get this awful leadership experience and then decide to leave.
I love that. You know, we have this missing generation, like you just mentioned, and I do agree that they looked at the trades as their plan B.
Yeah.
Right? I'm going to go to college. If that doesn't work out, then I'll do this. And we're starting to see now that didn't work out for a lot of people. But it's interesting to me when you think about the way we just operate, especially in North America. The first thing we do, get up in the morning and we grab our phones.
Mm-hmm.
As long as the phone charged, I don't think a second about the electrical grid. I don't care. My phone's charged. I'm good.
Yeah.
I get in the car, and as long as it starts up, I don't think for a second about the mechanic. I don't think about the pipeline to get the fuel. I don't think about it as long as it works. But the second it doesn't work, then all of a sudden I freak out. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I think happened with that missing generation is we didn't appeal to the parents enough.
No.
In the industry. And I love what you said about you're having conversations with your teenagers. The parent is having conversations with the child. And there's so much emphasis on, well, I'm in the high schools and I'm in the trade schools. Who's in front of the parents having these conversations? Which again is a whole separate episode in of itself. But
totally. There's so many forks in this road we could go down.
But let's get back to empathy for a minute. So give me some examples. And I'd love it if you have both good examples and bad examples of a field leader putting on the empathy hat. Like how should that show up, and how do you normally see it show up so that our listeners can go, oh yeah, so that's not what we're doing, or that's what we need to do.
So I started out, like, I was an engineer. I went into construction management. And so from like, I don't know, I was like 22 years old, and on these job sites, first only female, like we didn't even have females in the trades 25 years ago, or many, and they definitely weren't on my job sites. So good examples of field leaders is I show up on one job site. He's already understood that first I need a separate bathroom, right? Like he's got it. So I'm like, thank you, because there's many a job site I show up to and there isn't. And you know, and it's like, sometimes I've been on job sites where there's only urinal facilities, and I'm like, that doesn't work for me. Right. And telling me to like go to the coffee shop down the road every time I need to use the restroom is not a solution.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't make me feel included. So that's just like a super small example, but you know, everything from another one would be like, I express emotion differently than most men. My go-to when I get overwhelmed or frustrated or I start to have big feelings is I start to cry. I get quiet and I start to cry. Do I want to cry? No. Would it be my first go-to if I had a choice? Probably not, but that's where I go to. Most of the men that I've worked with in my career, they don't go to crying, right? They go to throwing stuff, yelling louder, screaming, slamming doors, walking out. Like they have a different expression of emotion. And so for like many, many years, almost a decade, the feedback I got was like, you need to be tougher. And it wasn't until I was probably about 12 to 15 years into my career where somebody actually told me, they're like, actually, Erin, I don't think that you need to get rid of this thing. I think you need to start to use it because you actually have a really good beat on everybody else's situation in the team. Like, you know what's going on with people before they even tell us. And I want to lean on that. And I want to use that strength in you. And I'm like, a strength? Are you kidding me? What are you talking about? Like, I have been trying for 12 years to toughen up and to get my game face. And now you're here telling me I should use this? I was so confused. And yet when I leaned into it, I stopped being taken off guard by my own emotions because I was allowed to feel them. So now they weren't as big and they weren't as crazy and overwhelming. And also I could connect with other people because that's how human beings connect. We connect on an emotional level.
Yeah. It's interesting. You brought me back to an event that I had real early on when I started doing this. So when I transitioned from marketing, chief marketing officer, that kind of stuff into this recruiting side, which if you don't know, I think is a marketing activity anyways. So
Yes.
it works out. I'll never forget. I was sitting down with an owner of a construction company and he goes, I'm not interested in this warm, fuzzy, fluffy, emotional stuff. We don't do emotions on our job site. And I looked him square in the eye and I said, let me ask you a question. When's the last time that you had a foreman throw something or curse someone out or hit something or someone? He's like, happens all the time. In fact, I just got a phone call. It just happened about an hour and a half ago. I go, that's called emotion.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
us channeling the wrong type. People
Exactly.
shouldn't have to be fearful for physical harm on a job site. Construction's difficult and scary and dangerous enough as it is.
Totally.
We shouldn't have people going this path. I love that you had a leader that saw that in you and stepped up and said, hey, we can use this.
Yeah.
But you brought up a great point is I think a lot of times leaders, they want to do some of this, but they don't have the tools. They're not equipped and it causes confusion.
Yeah.
Like, wait a minute, for 12 years, I've been told that this is a weakness and I need to toughen up. And now you're telling me it's not. Like, I don't know what to do. And we
Yeah.
have this saying, confused people do nothing.
Yeah.
And so when you confuse people, you lose them and they don't do anything. And then they end up not being productive. So how can people okay, they get it. They're like, Erin, I'm bought into this empathy thing, but I got 30 years of stuff to unlearn and I'm willing to go do it and test it out and see how it works. But gosh, I fumble over myself and my people are confused and they're like, who are you? What's going on? What is some ways that people can say, hey, what's a baby step they can take into being a little bit more empathetic with their team or actually putting themselves in a situation where like, I get it.
Yeah. So I have this thing, it's like inside out. Like, you need to do the inside work first. So most of us want to start being more empathetic with our teams, but we don't want to feel anything ourselves. We're like, no, I don't do emotion, right? Just like your leader, you're like, nah, that's not for me. I don't do that.
Yeah.
If you are a human being, you are an emotional being. Like, this is just part of how we are built.
Yep.
And I always say, whether you're kind of buttoned up and don't feel anything or your emotions are messy and all over the place, they're just opposite ends of the spectrum and two different symptoms of the same root problem, right? Which is this lack of capacity to hold our emotions. So we got to start inside first. We got to start feeling our feelings. And the simplest place is like in the shower, right? Every morning when you're in the shower, just like check in. What am I feeling? And it'll start with like, I don't know. Because that's usually where we start. We're like, I don't know what I'm feeling, right? Maybe by day 4, you're like, oh, I'm feeling a little tired, or I'm feeling a little like worn out or a little bit overwhelmed. The more you do it, right, it's a muscle. It's like you might only do 1 push-up the first time you start, but if you do it day after day after day, by the end of the week, maybe you get to 5, right? Empathy is a muscle in our brain, not in our physical body, but it's a muscle in our brain. It's a neural pathway we have to strengthen. And so I just say start in the shower, because for some people, they're going to feel some big stuff and there might be tears involved. And so the shower is a nice, easy place. Nobody has to see it,
Safe.
right?
Yeah.
Washes it all away. It's a safe space. And it's kind of defined. It's limited. I'm only going to feel while I'm in the shower, right? Because again, when people first start, the concern is, I can't let this take away. Like, I can't feel this all day long. If I open up a little bit, it might carry me away.
Mm-hmm.
And so the shower is like a finite container. It's fixed. It's a duration of time. You're like, I only feel in the shower when we first start.
I love that. So as you're talking about that. So eventually a week, 2 weeks, a month go by, you're feeling it, you're
Yeah.
embracing it. You're going, oh, maybe there's a chance for me to step out now and share that with someone on my team. Red alert, red alert, red alert. They're going to think I'm weak. They're going to think I'm soft. Never mind.
Totally.
So where do we
Right.
go from
Or
there?
maybe we don't even share it, but maybe it allows you to just open that question of like, how are you doing, and actually listen, instead of just like, hey, how you doing today? Good. Okay, good. Right. Like, because that's really how most of that interaction goes, right? We just
Absolutely.
want
We
people
don't
to say,
care.
we're fine.
Yeah.
We're fine. We're good. So maybe it starts to change that interaction, and you go, hey, how are you doing today? Like, I'm really curious. What's going on for you? And sure, that may send up a red flag in your team, and they may go, whoa, what's wrong with, Joe today? Like, I don't know what's going on with him. But that's where you would start, because again, once you start to realize that your own emotions aren't as scary as we think they're going to be, then holding space for other people's emotions isn't as scary as we think it's going to be. And again, it's information. We're just gathering information, right?
Yeah.
So if the team's like frustrated with, I don't know, a new policy or the way that this piece of the project is going, like, you need that information as leaders to make decisions about how to rally them, about how to get them bought in, about how to get things done.
Mm.
So it's not about, just emotions everywhere and all of us crying or throwing things all the time.
Yeah.
Hopefully when you start to have these conversations, there is less hammer throwing, there is less chair swinging, there is less door slamming, because people, recognize it earlier.
One of the things I see a lot of leaders tell me, oh, I don't get too emotional about business. I'm like, so tell me, when's the last time you lost sleep about work?
Mm-hmm.
Those are emotions keeping you up at night. Nothing else.
Totally.
Nothing else. When you were talking, it reminded me of Brene Brown and her talk on
Yeah.
vulnerability, and how, and I'll totally butcher this, so go listen to the TED Talk. But if you're listening to this, but I love the part where she says, how many of you think that I am powerful in standing up here on stage while you're in the audience? How many of you look at that and go, wow, she's got it together? She goes, I'm scared to death.
Yeah.
Now, how many of you would want to be on the stage? And no hands go up. And she goes, but
No
think
hands.
about it. If you were up here, the whole audience would think that same powerful thing about you.
Yeah.
And it's something we forget, is that
Yeah.
everybody wants to see the emotions and have the emotional conversations, but nobody wants to be the first one to go.
Yeah. And I think really that's our job as leaders, is we are out in front, right? I don't know, like, if any of the listeners have children, but when my kids were little, if I was behind them trying to like maneuver them through the grocery store or the department store or the wherever we were going, like, it was a nightmare. They were all over the place. But if I'm out in front with the cart, walking, leading, they're trailing me. Like, they're like, Mommy, I can't catch up to you, right? It's like, I want to go with you. So as leaders, we have to remember that. We have to be out in front. We have to take the first step. We have to do this work first to show our teams that it's safe. It's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I love that. So first step, start doing it in the shower, letting your emotions come through, talk about how you're being emotional. One of the things I'm teaching my kids is how to use more words than just happy and sad.
Yeah. So
Other
next step is
right.
print the feeling wheel. If you Google feeling wheel,
Okay.
this is an exercise I give people all the time. Print the feeling wheel, Google it. There's like 100 million hits that come up, and you get color copies, and there's millions of them. And it just goes from those like 5 words we use all the time: happy, sad, mad, right? And then it goes out into like slightly more descriptive words, and then more descriptive words. I have one on the fridge, and it's like, I take the kids over there all the time, and I'm like, pick a word. How are you feeling? Right.
Yeah.
And it makes them dig a little deeper, because sometimes we're not angry. We're actually hurt.
Yeah.
Right. Or disappointed or let down or frustrated.
Or
But
numb.
we
I'm
call
looking,
it
I
anger.
Googled it. Numb. I
See?
would never say numb and angry would be on that same spectrum.
But it is.
It is. But I would
Yeah.
not put numb there.
Yeah.
And so this is cool. By the way, it's very colorful. There are a lot of words on it. A lot of words.
There are some black and white versions. But that's a great thing. Like, we need to build our vocabulary. So again, when you're in the shower, you're like, no, really, like, how am I feeling? so that when people come to you and they go, well, I'm just pissed off today, or, whatever, hopefully it's okay that I curse on your show, but, this is a show about construction. So
Yeah, I know. It's mostly construction people listening.
right. So it's like, they'll say that and you're like, yeah, okay, but what does that mean?
Yeah.
Right? Like, why are you feeling that way? Like, what's really happening? And that's the part where you'll start to connect with people, and you will get more information out of that conversation as a leader than you ever thought possible. And you will be able to use it in moving forward, because I think people think empathy moves us backwards.
Mm-hmm.
It moves us away from the goal.
I think that's where
Feeling
people
sorry
go.
for people, emotions are going to slow us down. It's just, it's messy. Well, is what you're doing not just as messy?
Yeah.
Like, you gotta, yeah. So,
I hear leaders, mostly owners, tell me, gosh, I just wish people would care as much about the business as I do, or even get close.
Yeah.
And what I say to that is, if you don't care that they've got personal stuff going on, divorce,
they'll never care.
And financial issues and mental health issues, a big one right now. I mean, for those of you that don't know, the construction industry's suicide rate is 5 times the national average.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's some mental health stuff going on. I know we all talk about it, and we have our safety programs to address it. We talk about it in our toolbox talks, but we never equip our leaders on how to deal with that stuff.
No.
And that's what you're talking about, though, is really being equipped with the tools to have these conversations and not be afraid of them, because it's real life.
It is. And we all have them. It's no different than, this is the thing, and I had a long career in construction, is every couple of years you're re-upping your skills to deal with cuts and breaks and bruises and band-aids and, slings and CPR and all this stuff. Never, ever, ever in my 22-year career was I ever equipped from a work standpoint to have a people conversation about what was going on.
Yeah.
Right? That was all work I did outside of, for my own professional development, when I started to be like, okay, so you got to get your own self sorted out so that you can lead other people, because apparently this is some skill you should be using. That was all work I did outside of, my profession, because I was curious about it.
Yeah.
But I'd love to see us like, let's bring this in as that, every couple years we're teaching people, or even every year, like, let's teach you how to have these conversations, how to use this muscle.
Well, I think it would do a bunch of things for the industry. One of the things that I really want to see is I want to see the trades become cool again. Like you had said, like we skipped this whole generation. And I think back to that picture of the guys sitting on that I-beam at the top of the tower in the 30s, totally. Right? New York. Like I've heard stories of kids going, that's what I want to do when I grow up. And now the generation sees it and goes, they don't are allowed to have cell phones on the job site. I'm out. Like it's so different. Totally. And I think that one of the ways to make this cool again is to let people know that, hey, you're not just here to build and put your life in danger and deal with the stresses and the rigor of this, but we're actually here to build a team and work together and support each other. And it blows my mind. Some of these, especially in the trades, we don't work with a lot of union shops for obvious reasons in the recruiting that we do. Yeah. But boy, those guys that are part of the union, and they think the trades are cool, and they get up there and they brag about it. And then people are like, well, that's cool for you, but that's not cool for me, because there's that disconnect. Like, I don't want to be a part of it. And I think what you're talking about with this empathy and being able to connect, I mean, that's really what it is. It's connection and belonging. Yep. What we're really talking about here. And, I love what Simon Sinek says, right? People just want to belong. They do.
They want to belong. And I think what's different than, because we always hear, I mean, I don't know, I grew up with the rhetoric of like, that's not how we do it around here. That's not how we did it back in my day. Right. And it's like, yeah, it wasn't, because it was different. But I'm like, there's so many more options now. I mean, it's not just like blue collar or white collar. It's like, you can be a Instagram influencer, you can be a YouTuber, you can be, a programmer. Like, there's so many opportunities. People don't have to stay in places where they don't feel valued and they don't feel seen and heard and understood. And this is the piece. This is like the key to unlocking that, where we can keep these young people engaged. We can keep these midlife people, engaged. just simply by understanding what they're going through and what do they need.
Yeah. Yeah. They don't leave their personal life at the door as much as we want
No,
them to. As much as we want
no,
them to. They do not. They bring it with
no.
them. We coach I see a lot of companies that will fire someone because they're late in their first 90 days. You're late once, you're fired.
Yeah.
They never will sit down once and ask them why they were late.
Yeah. What happened?
They don't care. It's just,
Yeah.
you're
Help
late,
me
you're
understand.
fired, you're done. And we can't continue that. That's not going to help.
No, there's not enough choice of people, but also like, my God, the cost of these companies doing that, this one conversation could save them so much money.
Yeah. I mean, I have a stat that I got from SHRM, which is entry level. The minimum cost is $4,906. The minimum cost to hire one person.
Minimum. Yeah.
And it's way more than that. But that's what SHRM could put numbers around.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
So
as soon as you put a skilled person in, forget it.
Yeah.
So
training them in these conversations is a lot more cost effective.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So connect with your feelings and then go out there and just ask other people about how they're doing and listen. I have a friend, it reminds me, I have a friend, he says, he goes up and people ask him, how you doing? He's like, horrible day. And they're like, that's good. Like they're not even listening. And he knows it. And they're like, wait a minute, you're having a horrible day? Like they weren't even listening. They were on autopilot.
Yeah, because we're listening to respond, not listening to understand,
Absolutely.
right? That's the difference. Yeah. And so many of us are. There was this, I don't know who said it, but it's like we have 2 ears and 1 mouth to be used in that ratio, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. You know what, Erin, this was awesome. We could keep going. And
yes, there's so much to talk about.
There's so much here. I think the takeaway for me is practice with how I feel so that when I do get out there and I ask others how they're feeling, I can understand that and I can empathize with them. Not sympathize, not go down the spiral of woe is us, but actually have empathy. And I think understanding how we ourselves are feeling can really help with that. That was the big takeaway for me. So I hope I got that right.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly it. And I think, the second piece that I would hope, we didn't talk about it much, but I think the thing that we need to layer on top of that is it's not necessarily your job to fix everything. And I know as construction people who are paid to be problem solvers, like that's what we do all day long. The fixing muscle is very strong in us, right? We look at a problem, we fix it. We run into problems all day long. It's why we have jobs as construction people, because stuff doesn't go as planned.
Yeah.
So when we see a person in front of us that's having a big emotion, we want to fix it. And that's not our job.
Yeah.
Your job is to hear it.
That reminds me of that YouTube video. It's like a decade old. It's not about the nail. Have you seen that one?
Oh, love it. Yes. Yes. If you haven't seen it, go look it up because it's fabulous.
Yes, it is great.
And that's just it. It's not about the nail, right? Many conversations I've had where people just needed to share, hey, they're going through a tough time. This might impact them. And you go, is there anything you need from me? They're like, no, I just needed you to know.
Yeah.
Great. Let's carry on with work. Again, not setting us back, not relaxing the standards, not letting people off the hook, simply understanding what they're going through so that we can co-create and work together to get to that finish line.
We are the most connected generation in the history of the world and the most lonely.
Yeah.
Those shouldn't go together.
No.
They should not go together.
No.
So, Erin, how do people listening to this, they go, okay, I'm going to bite. How do I learn more? What do you have for me? How do you help them? What's the next step? Because I imagine that this is like anything. They're going to go, they're going to do it, and it's not going to work the way they thought it would. And they're going to have to go, okay, that doesn't work. That's not what we want.
Yeah.
It's like
that's not what we want.
So how do they learn more? How do they get a hold of you?
Best place is to start on my website, which is www.erinthorp.ca. That's THORP with no E on the end. Because you will get a different Erin Thorp if you put the E on the end.
Perfect.
And then, so from there, there is a 5-day kind of empathy practice download, which just gives you some of the practices we've talked about here and a couple more, so that you can find it erinthorp.ca/empathy. I also have a book. It's called Inside Out Empathy. So if people are readers, they can go ahead and download the book. And last but not least, I'm launching a podcast in January of 2024 that will highlight how this actually looks in real life situations. So what does empathy look like in action? Because that's the number one question I get most asked.
That's what we talked about.
Yeah.
That's 28 minutes. So yes, I totally get that. Erin, thank you so much. Really enjoyed it. Like I said, I got a page of notes, and I have some good takeaways from it as well. So thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Ryan.
Ryan Englin here. Thank you so much for listening to Titans of the Trades. If you're a titan in the construction, manufacturing, or skilled trades industry and would like to be a guest on my show, please visit podcast.corematters.com. If you found value in this interview, would you share this episode on social media? Just do a quick screenshot on your phone and share it with a friend or post it on social. And if you know someone that would be a great guest, tag them on social media to let them know about the show and include the hashtag Titans of the Trades. I love seeing your posts and guest suggestions. We are regularly putting out new episodes and content. To make sure you don't miss any episodes, click the subscribe button. Your thumbs up, ratings, and reviews go a long way to help promote the show and get me one step closer to solving the labor crisis facing the industry. Want to know more about how we're doing that? Go to our website or follow me on LinkedIn. Thanks for listening.